Citizen Television.
Without interpreters in the middle, it's like that realization that they're just like we are. They want the same things for their children. They laugh, they smile, they cry.
Go to the website. I'm sorry, my 80-year-old mother-in-law doesn't have a computer, so those lists need to be mailed to all the residents that don't, so they do have them on hand.
Absolutely. You can also call. The questions about the fees to connect to sewer can either be answered by calling the city at 879-6900 for the building department, and they'd be happy to get you to the right place. You can actually call me directly at 538-6182, and I'm happy to answer questions about connection to the sewer, explain the nitrate program, and get you any forms by mail that you need, or direct you to online services if that's a way to access them for you as well.
Can you average the linear foot cost for those fees?
If you're in the nitrate compliance program area where sewer was brought in front of your property in this Chapman Mulberry neighborhood area,
Let's presume within 250 feet.
if you're in that nitrate compliance boundary area, those fees are waived for you. I cannot approximate the linear foot costs otherwise. You would have to call the city directly or call me, and we can help calculate those for you. 538-6182. Casey Hatcher with Butte County.
And make us do this, or make you do this. Why can't we sue LAFCO for forcing us to do something?
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, against our wills.
Great question. You can always sue anyone. Nothing prevents you from doing that. I can't say that it is the most intelligent use of resources necessarily, but you can always sue LAFCO. Yeah, that's about all I can probably. Well, let's take the gentleman with the ASA. Okay. Yes.
I heard a number floated that this was 66 by LAFCO unauthorized connections that's driving this annexation process in this lawsuit. And I'm wondering, since 66 connections at $600 a piece, which is a LAFCO fee, is less than $40,000, what is LAFCO, what is the price tag of LAFCO's got in the lawsuit? What do you think?
Significant. It's $100,000 plus $100,000 plus $600,000 in municipal services every year. I mean, I'm not sure the city is saying how high. There's no question the city has resisted the annexation, and I'm not certain that that's fair to the residents, given that the island's created. But I think it's a question of making sure that we have the services available when they're going to be annexed. I can tell you with certainty, the LAFCO has told us they will push to annex the entire island in less than a year. What does that cost to the residents? What does that cost to municipal services? The ability to provide those municipal services. I'm not sure the city is well, I can tell you the city is not taking a revenue gain in this case.
One more thing is based on what Casey said. Casey mentioned that if you're in the nitrate compliant area, that many of the fees are waived and that you have a free lateral coming to your property. But that's not true for everybody in a block by block situation where the sewers were brought in. And I can take this as clarification because there are not only certain random people get ignored by this process, aka islands, those individuals also cannot apply for the city's sewer connection grant program. And there you go.
Yeah, I'd like to help clarify that. So the nitrate compliance program, as I mentioned, has been a long time coming. It's been quite old. The original groundwater investigations started in 1979. The city and the county worked on the nitrate action plan. It was adopted in 2000. The loan was secured with the state in 2008, and construction has been going in 6 phases in the city ever since. So it is a program with a long, long history. When the nitrate action plan was being developed in 1998, technical studies, which were commissioned by the county with funding from CSA 114, which is the service area of the prohibition order from the regional board, established what are called nitrate hotspots. And so there were lots of groundwater monitoring studies to understand the nitrate contributions in the groundwater. And the high density residential areas were identified as major contributors to the groundwater contamination, and those were targeted for connection. So these connection area boundaries, I would be the first to admit, are incredibly illogical. They're very jagged, and I'm sure it's frustrating for residents who have a neighbor across the street who's in the boundary and they're right across the way and they're outside of the boundary. But those boundaries were drawn in 1998 based on those technical studies. They were locked in when the loan funding was secured from the state, and those are the boundaries we have. So the waivers for the properties inside those connection boundaries actually come from the loan from the state. That's how those waivers are funded. And so I agree, I answered this question a lot, and the answer is not perfect, but those boundaries are drawn, and those waivers come from the funding from the state. So I hope that helps to clarify why the boundaries are what they are, but I know it's not a perfect answer.
I know the lady's here first, but I just want to give the numbers. I live across one property that is not hotspot. One of the properties is $1,693.
Correct, that's a
The
trunk
other
like
one,
me.
the other one that is hotspot, $4,802. You just across the street, they
I
will pay
understand.
$1,693. Thank you.
And what he's talking about is that I mentioned those four fees that you pay. 3 of them are waived if you're in the connection area boundaries and you pay just the $1,693 for the trunk line. And so I recognize that it's frustrating for residents that are directly adjacent to those connection area boundaries.
If something can be done,
Go ahead.
raise the light.
I know this is an emotional issue, I came in a little later, could you please restate why nitrates are harmful? What are the public health hazards? What is it doing for our groundwater so the company continue to lower nitrates?
I'm not really the person to answer that. We don't have a representative from environmental health here, so I apologize because this was a meeting focused on annexation and not necessarily the sewers. We have lots of information about the harmful effects from nitrate in our groundwater that are available on the environmental health website. And we issue newsletters on approximately a quarterly basis, and in those we typically have information about the health detriments to the nitrate contamination. And I really apologize, I'm just not an expert in that area to answer that question.
I'm sure if you say cancer and blue baby syndrome, which will kill infants exposed to nitrate-based water. That's all I know.
We're not capable of answering that. I should have had somebody here.
I think it's
I
important
appreciate
that
it.
we know why, what's driving the state to ask for this.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Right here, standing
There's a woman standing in the
I'm sorry,
back.
forgot. Go ahead.
Excuse me, ma'am. Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned the regional quality control board. Is that an affiliate of EPA? And is it an elected body or is it an appointed body?
The Regional Water Quality Control Board is actually affiliated with the State Water Resource Control Board, so they are the regional entity.
How are they related to the EPA and are they elected or are they appointed?
The state board is appointed. I'm
Okay,
not.
so we have people who are not elected making decisions about what happens in my backyard. Okay, and so what you guys are forced to do, because of the way the government is arranged right now, is to serve Sacramento. Not Chapman,
Not Mulder.
but not Mulberry, but you are serving Sacramento. You all got to decide who you're going to serve. Excuse me, But one more sentence, and then I'll shut up. As elected people, I guess LAFCO is 4 elected, 1 appointed? Or 4 elected, right?
6 elected, 1 appointed.
Okay, those 6 people are elected to serve the people.
No.
Not us serving Sacramento through you.
Yeah, I think you brought up an interesting point. At what point am I working for the residents of this community as an elected representative? And the answer is, I'm here to represent your interests. And let's keep in mind also, none of you voted for me. Because you couldn't. Exactly. You're not residents of the city. You have an elected county representative, Larry Wall, Supervisor Wall is here. But the state has a process that they are mandating certain things to take place in this community. Again, that is not the city that's doing this. We have opposed this for some time, and whether that's righteous or not can be in question. But we've opposed it, and now it is being. LAFCO has the least sexy job in the world. Everybody hates them. I mean, I'm not here to sympathize with or build sympathy for LAFCO, but they're the most hated organization in the state. So I'm going to go back to, there's a question here about Little Chico Creek and Dome Mill, and I want LAFCO to address that question. Sir, you asked it some time ago.
So you asked about Little Butte Creek Estates, south of town. Second signal.
North. The big.
East of town.
Okay. I have no idea where that was annexed to the city. Along with Dome Mill, I'm not, that was a little before my time. I could have been back in the early 1980s, middle 80s, I'm not sure. Even at that time, they had to apply to LAFCO. I'll be honest with you, in previous LAFCOs, the composition, they weren't as strong. They didn't use all the laws that they had that were available. The laws have been increased to give LAFCOs, the commission, more power to review annexation projects. And in the last 10 years or so, the commission has taken advantage of that. As pursuant to state law, these are the laws that the state gives the commission to do. They have to look at certain things. As I mentioned before, the creation of logical boundaries. Well, obviously doing Dome Mill way out there when there was maybe a lot of intervening or peninsula out there, well, that's not very logical. Our commission is completely, the composition now, the last 10 years or so, is, I don't want to say activist, but they're very active. They're very aware of their requirements, of their role in reviewing annexations. And they hold us, they hold staff to these rules and regulations that they go by. And so when we make a recommendation for an annexation, let's say the city of Chico wants to do something on the east side, on the west side out in the ag zone, well, we're going to speak up and say, no, that's illogical, where maybe several years, 10 or more years ago, the LAFCO would have said, well, that's okay, we trust the city. So that's where we come in, and we look at the Chapman and Mulberry areas as completely illogical boundaries. You have to admit you're completely surrounded by the city of Chico. Now, those situations, I believe, were created prior to LAFCO becoming in existence in 1961. Now, I know there have been bits and pieces that have been annexed back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, that were adjacent to the Chapman area, but overall, the islands have existed, I believe, well before LAFCOs came into existence. I hope I answered your question. This gentleman here had a question about stuff.
Once the city annexes a piece of an area, the construction are put in for better, so the city pays on their way back to the state on that. And so when they do take responsibility to the United States, it is a way of getting the taxpayers to pay twice for what we disagree with. But what I disagree with the most is it's required without a plan. The city doesn't they can then fit it in basically so it lines up with whatever plan they've been developed. The developer also chooses to, of course, do the least expensive installation they can for curb gutters, which again doesn't always fit into what the future plan is. It would be nice to see the city actually come up with a plan. 15 years ago, the city has to go. They were sticking to it. The last 10 years, we've seen the city has basically let go of a lot of the overall vision for what the city was going to look like in hopes of bigger and faster development. And it doesn't always benefit here, especially you get into an area like Chapman, which is very country. You end up with curb and gutter on one house block. It just does. It's going to look like crap for years until something happens after. Like I said, often you end up tearing it out when you actually start putting in curb and gutters in the plan that you would then develop 15 years down the road or 10 years down the road. I think there needs to be more time put into creating that plan now before you require a developer to put in a curb and gutter. One is not going to it doesn't fit into any long term. And two, you basically made a pay for it twice because the taxpayer is paying for it, and then the homeowner is then paying for it again. The first pay for it. And I understand as a city you're gonna pull the money out of here. But I would much rather see you guys actually come up with a plan in advance instead of waiting 10 years down the road so that we can all work towards that same plan. We can look at through the plan you have in force or you have in place now as opposed to waiting to see what you might come up with down the road. And the other thing is, for all of you that are unhappy with the idea that you were left out of the nitrate compliance zone, you are welcome to try to contact me. We are looking at litigation against the state for the fact that you have been excluded. That would then improve the city as well, because though the city has said numerous times that people are not actually being discriminated against, the reality is they are. And being discriminated against by the state fund, just making the state compliant in the discrimination, whether or not the city wants to take responsibility. So I would be happy to get as many of the signatures as I can, and I've been collecting them on the side as well, face to face with people. But it takes a large group that's willing to go in and stand up against the state, which would then pull the city into loss.
What's your number?
My name is Fox, F-O-X. My phone number is 530-513-4899. And my email address, if it's easier for you, is superlife5, that's SUPERLIGHT, the number 5, at yahoo.com. And you're more than welcome to contact me. Bear with me, I have talked to a lot of people, so I'm trying to get back to everybody as quickly as I can. And more than anything, right now, I need to go to the signatures so we can actually go forward with it. We do have some opinions by a couple of lawyers that do err on the side of caution with the city and think the city may be right the way it's been handled. But we also have a number of attorneys that are thinking it's the other way around. And there are some clearer actions of discrimination. But as far as the plan, the curbs and gutters, I would really like to see you guys come up with something now and not later, so we can do this one time in a place.
There are actually some guidelines that have been adopted for Chapman Township to develop, and a lot of that is trying to keep the character that all of you had said that you wanted at the time. So those things are guidelines, and I understand that people's preferences change over time. Planning ahead is a must, because otherwise you do it twice. And frankly, I'm not in favor of spending any money twice on anything. Some people are dislike to tell you all the fact is that we haven't done a lot of planning in this area because it is in the county. If it were in the city, we wouldn't be looking at it. We're trying to be sets and corners. We got a lot of undeveloped property already has corners that are set. There may be an existing sidewalk or an existing drainage that tells us where it's going to be, basically. But in this area, a lot of it's undeveloped and unpositioned, so that there's a lot of room for that plan to be developed further.
I am a long-time resident both of the Mulberry District in the 1970s and homeowner now here in this portion of Chapman Town. My concern, I'm going to assume that I heard correctly and the annexation is a done deal. Just for a moment, I'm going to assume. I'm going to assume that because I'd like to address.
As far as they're concerned, it is.
I understand that. And
It's
so
not.
my question actually goes to exactly the point that was brought up by the developer gentleman here regarding planning ahead with the city for things like the undeveloped properties. The reason I mentioned that I was in the Mulberry District back in the 1970s is I've been through several of these. We have a master plan for land use in this area. My concern is, I think like everyone else here, to preserve the character of the neighborhood. We all can agree on that. What my concern is, I do not want to go into the city of Chico any more than anybody else. But part of the reason why is because I don't know what you have planned for all of these empty lots around here. And I'll tell you something. I think I speak for everybody here. We don't want to change the zoning so that we have multiple residential buildings and properties on these corners. I understand the concerns about the sewers and all that stuff. And I think that we need to address those. But let's not forget that we're going to have to live with some kind of decision. And if we don't address what the city has in mind for zoning in this area, assuming that they take us to the cleaners and put us into the city, we're in trouble. And then we're going to be piece by piece out here protesting, laying in the street because they're building, a two-story apartment building. So where do we go with those concerns to the city of Chico?
Currently, both as the county and city zonings for both these areas is almost all R1 or low-density residential, single-family type development, and that would continue. And you can look at the city's general plan on our website, and you can see what the land use designations are. Were this area, these two areas brought into the city, there would be pre-zoned in the R1 district, and development would occur on those parcels just as it would on any other parcel zoned that way in the city. R1 goes up to 6 units per acre. Some subdivisions, if they're small lot subdivisions, can go up to 7, but 6 is the usual cap on the density, 6 units per acre.
Yeah, well, this guy over here, he said it's got about 10 minutes.
Guy back here's had his hand up for about half an hour.
Caleb, your turn.
Thank you for all the staff representatives of the county and city staff who are here today. And I kind of agree with what she said. Most of us take a little approach and it's a done deal. But one thing bothers me, and I'll just ask a question. In this room, are there any of the voting representatives of LAFCO today? Or any of you? I know we have an hour here, but you are LAFCO? So I don't believe we have a LAFCO representative here. So what we're doing is we're talking to a messenger. That is your job.
Larry Wall is a LAFCO member.
No,
He's an alternate.
He's an alternate. I'm talking about the ones that actually vote. How do we express directly our concerns to the LAFCO board? And it seems to me that at some point in time in this room or another room, we should have the entire LAFCO board sitting here. They don't, if it could be an official meeting, we'll behave ourselves. But I think they need to hear not the technical questions. We don't want to that you guys can handle that. We're doing a good job answering questions. But I would like to convey face to face to the LAFCO member my concern about what I perceive as a great threat to my quality of life here in Chapman and with those in Mulberry.
There are several ways. On February 17th, the City Council is going to hold a hearing whether to consider adoption of that annexation plan. That's a public hearing. We encourage anybody to be there to speak up. City, it's not a done deal because if the City Council says no to the annexation agreement, if they vote, if it gets denied, they don't want to go forward with it, that ends the annexation. LAFCO cannot initiate an annexation on itself. That can only be done by, to a city, it can only be done by a city, or it can be done by residents via petition to LAFCO. That's one way of doing it. So LAFCO, again, we can't initiate that. You're free to address the commission at any time. You can send us a letter, you can send us an email. We will, if you send it to the commission via, send it to staff, we give it to them. You can come to their hearing, they meet the first Tuesday of every month. The next one is March 5th. We encourage you to come there. You know yet, we can actually put it on the agenda and say that you wish to address them. You can write letters, etc. Now, if the city approves the annexation agreement and it comes to us, and it'll be via island, we will hold a public hearing. We will be noticed about that hearing. However, LAFCO by state law is required to approve that. Gentlemen, in the way back.
I don't want to throw Mr. Betts under the bus, but yes, it's true. LAFCO cannot initiate an annexation on their own. They have to take a request from somebody. One person applies, and the request will be, we want the entire island. So while that's what Mr. Betts said is technically accurate, as soon as somebody requests an annexation, the request will be for the entire island. And I failed to mention, as I started out, that there are a number of people that don't represent you that are here. Members of the City Council, Ann Schwab, a colleague, a council member, and Tammy Ritter are here. Supervisor Larry Wall is here. Just about all of the senior staff from the City of Chico, the city manager and the assistant city manager. Mayor Sorensen was here earlier, and our department heads regarding this, as well as some fire representatives. I forgot to introduce them and mention that they were here, so I apologize for that. You've got a significant city resource staff here, as well as county and LAFCO representatives. I'm sorry, what?
That's why I would appreciate if I could direct my question to you.
I'll take it out of turn. I apologize. Yes, go ahead.
My question is, I'm also concerned about the hardship to the people in Chapman County. We're talking about sewers, we're talking about this, we're talking about that. We all pretty well know about that. We've got a little information today. Now, the city council and everybody involved, LAFCO and everybody, needs to know about hardship. You take a person who's on Social Security, all of a sudden they have to do this, even if it goes on their taxes. I have seen them like that when you go to the store, and that's what they eat. I know people right here in Chapman that have to buy hot dogs, that's part of them up, and that's what they eat. So that expense, plus, they don't even have the money to clean their property up. I don't think anybody in the city council is going to sit and tell me that we have enough code enforcement officers, and the county sure must not. You're all on doing marijuana or something, because, you know, there's something going on.
Marijuana eradication.
There's something going on there. All the people that just got hired and got trained, they must have got trained to stay away from here. Well, how could you even force those people if you did come in here? Are you going to throw them out in the street? Are you going to put them in another shopping cart, say, hang out over 20th Street, use the bathroom on the lawn, so the school has to put a fence up?
There's water lines on there,
Kids
sir.
can't see it?
Yeah, and
I mean, there's a lot of hardship, and I want you to understand, I appreciate everybody has showed up. I appreciate you in Chapman. I appreciate all of you. I might not sound like it at times because it's my life, you know, but that's kidding. Another part of me says, hey, I put this much money buying a house, I want to improve it, I want to do this, and here's my neighbor's place. Well, if the city come in, well, how can the city do it? They don't have the money. The county, they're gonna, oh, okay, it's a catch-22 all the way around the block for everybody.
Yeah, there's no question.
And I want to thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Look, the reason why we haven't had an annexation meeting is because this is not, I can tell you it's not fun to sit up here, especially knowing that we have resisted this for some time, and we're caught in a squeeze.
No, you're not.
If the Chapman Mulberry area were annexed tomorrow, the city does not have the resources to adequately address the public safety. We marginally have the public safety resources to address the city as it is now, and we're working very hard and have been very successful at addressing that deficiency. But we're not there yet. Would we be in 5 years? According to our plan, yeah, we're moving very closely to. There's never any guarantee. But I'll tell you what keeps me up at night. It's not Mulberry. It is a mandate. I don't want to get too far into the weeds. But I have a concern that the economy is going to tank between now and 2018. If it hits in 2018, the state's going to be looking for a money grab. And I know where they come from their cash machine. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. So you're right. I mean, we cannot afford to annex tomorrow. Can we afford to annex in 5 years? We can incorporate that in a plan, including a neighborhood plan, to keep this neighborhood the way that it is. I used to live just on the other side of Little Chico Creek on Humboldt Avenue. It was absolutely loved the neighborhood. It's the best place I've ever lived in Chico. And I'm sorry that I had to leave for other reasons. Yes, Marty in the back.
Everybody's under the impression that the annexation is unavoidable. Correct. Larry Wall filled me in on it just the other day. Did you all know that with a minimum vote of yourselves, you can incorporate and start annexing parts of Chico instead? Did you know that? Why is everybody not discussing this? My question for you is, all it takes to instigate an incorporation procedure is a petition of 25% of the registered voters of Chapmantown, or a petition signed by 25% of the overall land area in Chapmantown, and you could have your own town. A town that had a representative government, which they don't in Chico, and none of these guys represent any of you, okay? LAFCO doesn't represent you. Here's my second point, is that there are two people in the Chico City Council that did not take money from developers. Two of them. And both of you know who you are, okay? Everybody else on the city council has taken money from developers. Everyone. Everyone on the LAFCO board has taken money from developers except for Tom Lando, who's not elected. Okay? Of all those people, you go to the LAFCO site, you bring up the About page, it says, objective number 1, facilitate the enforcement of state law regarding annexations. And you know what objective number 2 is? Facilitate real estate development. It's right on the front page of the LAFCO thing. You guys ought to look this stuff up. And who are they developing? Everybody's going, you know why LAFCO's not here? Because you don't mean anything to them. And all the complaints about quality life and all the complaints about this and that don't mean anything to them, because they get paid by the real estate developers, and the developers' fees paid on real estate developments. These people who sit on the LAFCO board aren't doing it for charity, people. They're getting paid. And what, you know who's your boss? Is the guy that writes your checks. And the guy that writes the checks for the city council members are the bosses of the city council. And the reason why it's like that is because they operate a non-representative style of government. There's no aldermans. You don't represent a neighborhood. Nobody knows who their city council member is because you ain't got one. The only people they meet are the guys that come to the fundraisers and write the checks. And I'm proud to say that this guy made a conscious choice not to take the dough. How many times did you refuse it, Randall?
I don't think I've taken money from a developer.
No, I'm saying, how many times did you have to refuse taking the money, sir?
They probably were not had any interest in usually the way that goes. I didn't receive any money from any public employee unions either.
So my question is for you. If the residents of Chapmantown chose to incorporate to defend themselves against the annexation, which is actually a lot less trouble and requires less meetings, would you choose to support that if they chose to develop their own utility districts and their own fire districts? I've already talked to the fireman department. They'll give us a break on what they charge for firemen.
You've got a great question, and I got a call from a constituent in another section of town who told me, look, I don't know why you voted against annexation the last time, but
I know why.
That's just not fair to the residents of Chapmantown. And I said, okay. And he said, you know, when my property was annexed, before it was annexed, I went door to door and talked to my neighbors, and we all agreed that annexation was appropriate at that time. And I said, you're exactly right, to my friend. I said, you're exactly right. You went door to door and you did this. And he said, yeah, we had a neighborhood meeting. And I said, you're exactly right. You held a neighborhood meeting. That hasn't been done. And that's why I voted against it in November, and that's why we're here today. We're having that meeting to discuss annexation. So, an excellent point. If the neighbors want to
Incorporation.
get together, I'm not opposed to.
Incorporation's on the table as well, but it's never being mentioned.
I didn't receive any notification in the mail that there was going to be a from the city.
That this meeting was going to?
That's right. I didn't receive that. All I got was a letter from James. Because I'm not property owner. My property's outside of town, but I live and I vote here in Chapman. Another thing, under the premises that Chapman is surrounded, and it's an island, it's a community, okay? It's a neighborhood, all right? And for instance, the fairground, is that the city of Chico? No. What is it? No, it's the state.
It's the state.
Agricultural, okay? That's not a city. Okay, what about Community Park? Is Community Park part of the city? No, it's Chico Area Recreation District.
Which is owned by the city. They manage the property for us.
Yeah, but when we went and tried to do things over there, the city couldn't help us. We had to go to CAR.
Because they administer the property.
That's right, it's a different political subdivision. So your premise that we're an island, we're not an island. We're communities. Okay? And that's what you're hearing here. And the other thing I think that you're hearing a lot of here is governance by the consent.
I just noticed that when people say you have no alternative.
You need to get in touch with the community and do what they said. Get the community, because there's lots of other ways besides building sidewalks and cutting down all the trees all over town, starting with the concrete plaza downtown, okay? And everywhere else, and you got a picture of a tree on the side of the city truck. Yeah. But that's not what you're doing right now. You're cutting down all the big trees, and we tried to save one tree on Fifth Avenue. And John Bidwell went, you couldn't put, there's modern ways of doing it. No, they had to put a sidewalk through there with 18 feet of concrete, 18 inches of concrete. It didn't even really kill that tree. That tree could have been pruned back. But not even, and the city council, including Larry Wall, voted to save that tree. But they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They had to cut that tree down, put in sidewalk. There's lots, this community will not fit sidewalks. There's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of more modern ways of doing things. Try and get the city to build parking lots. Try and get the city to pass an urban tree management plan. Try to do all those things. I was on the parking commission when they had the Chirac. None of my ideas like the free bus zone downtown. They wouldn't. I was on the committee. They wouldn't write it down. They wouldn't even write it down. So you're asking us to become part of the city. The city is not responding to our needs, and they're not even in touch with us. You don't have a plan. You don't have a long-term plan for what to do here, and you don't have an apparatus for input. So if you work on those things, we're not against hooking up to the sewer. We're not against those kind of things, but we would like the flavor and the character of this community to stay away, because this is the only place in town, like you say, that a working person can afford to own a home. The rest of it's all been taken over by development.
But anything that's being sold now is being bought and improved, and the rents are $1,200 and up.
Right. So we're going to be forced to buy our own. That's why you're seeing the opposition here. Because you don't have the mechanism. You don't have people on your own board that even live here.
Right.
Governance by the consent of the governed. That's what we're asking.
So why don't
Councilmember Schwab.
I want to thank Councilmember Stone very much for convening this meeting. If this meeting had been conveyed by LAFCO at the beginning of this process, we would have all understood what was going on, and LAFCO could have heard what everyone's concerns were. Concerns of people here in the neighborhood. So, Mr. Betts, you said that LAFCO was going to have a meeting on March 5th to hear this item.
Where?
No.
It's going to be over in Oroville. Of course. I'm asking if you could have your LAFCO meeting here, closer to where the people are, so that they can express their opinions.
Let's make a little record. I didn't say that we were a hearing on March 5th for it. I said if individual people or group had something to say, the commission, you can come to that hearing, that public hearing. There's always, just as the city council has a, officer know that, and I'm sure he will, well, I know he will convey that to the commission for their consideration.
One more thing, Mr. Betts, you talked about LAFCO needing to enforce state laws about annexation. And I know there are a lot of state laws, and you are fulfilling those duties of the state. One thing that you haven't talked about are laws that the state of California has that allows for sewer hookups to occur because of health and safety reasons without annexing the properties. The reason that we are here is because your residents are under a mandate by the state of California to clean up the nitrates. So when your sewer fails, you need to hook up to the sewer. And that's what the city and the county came together. That's a health and safety reason. There are certain laws that the state of California has asked LAFCO to follow, and one of them is if somebody has a health and safety reason for needing to hook up for the sewer, then they can be annexed. They can be hooked up to the sewer without being annexed.
There you go.
That law is the law in the state of California as well.
I'm not aware of that law, but we'll certainly look into
In
that.
1999, it was enacted.
If you would like to email me that or Mr. Lucas that section, we're happy to review it.
And I
Stop.
said that we couldn't protest an island. You said islands could not protest. So if we come to your meeting, we're going to be shut down because we can't protest.
And that's what I said, but the commission is still very concerned. That's why I would encourage you to go to the February 17th city council meeting where they're going to consider adoption of the annexation. Several of them that are here today, they've already heard your concerns, and the rest of the council will hear your concerns. They may not vote for this. They may deny the annexation.
And so they're going to sue and they're not going to be able to come and say,
Oh.
why you up on
Well, we don't have to sue. That's something that really hasn't been discussed. Now, if the lawsuit is not over the annexation, the lawsuit is over the 61 unauthorized sewer connection. If the city was, right now, today, to submit an application for all 61 of those, LAFCO, they would get those, they of course have to pay the fees for all that. LAFCO would review those. I'm assuming LAFCO would approve them. I don't know what the commissioner would do, but I'm assuming they would approve them. The lawsuit goes away. That's the bone of contention.
because you said there was no lawsuit, now you're saying there's a lawsuit,
No
now you're
law-
saying there's only 61 of us or 66 of us that have to do it, that all of us don't have to do it, and yet we've all been told we have to do it.
The annexation agreement, which the commission has approved, the city council has not, actually they already denied that several months ago. It's intended as a compromise between LAFCO and the city. If the annexation goes through, everyone within the Chapman and Mulberry Island area, they can hook up the sanitary sewer system with nothing from LAFCO. You don't have to pay any fees, no approval, they don't review it, nothing.
I don't know if you understand
Say that again.
I don't know if you record what. It sounds like to me, you're trying to buy for used cars, or you want to. The fact is, that is what we're talking about. We're trying to solve this subject.
And I just want to make sure on the lawsuit, LAFCO has not filed the lawsuit. The commission has authorized our legal counsel in the event that the city does not apply for those, does not submit the applications, then we would file in the lawsuit. But at this point, no official lawsuit. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Frazier.
Someone saying about sidewalks, several years ago, we worked on Mulberry,
question is whether or not the Chapman Mulberry neighborhood plan would be able to follow these areas in the city. The answer to that question is yes. In fact, any project that were approved or a subdivision or something like that, we'd have to actually make a finding that is a statement of fact affirming that development was consistent with that neighborhood.
Yes, thank you for taking me for a town hall meeting. The gentleman back here that said, no, you don't have to annex, incorporate. I'm wondering if there's a state law that says you do have to annex items or pockets within your city. Is there a state law that says you must, and therefore annexation is inevitable?
There, as I explained before, there's state law, and within the LAFCO law, there's a specific section in there that deals with annexation of islands, such as Mulberry and Chapman, or substantially surrounding areas. LAFCO is obligated by state law to utilize this. If the city initiates that annexation via the island annexation law, LAFCO is, the commission is obligated to approve that. That is a rule, that is a law that the state legislature gave LAFCO to do, because they recognize, I agree with you, they're down in Sacramento, they're not up here, but they recognize statewide that these islands are a problem. It's very difficult for the city, for the county to provide services. You're completely surrounded by the city of Chico. Most of your tax money is spent in the city of Chico, and you receive no benefit for that, for your area, because it all goes to the county right now. Excuse me, it all goes to the city. And you have no say in how the city operates. I mean, you can go to the city council and complain, but you're in the county. You need to go to the board of supervisors. If you were to be part of the city of Chico, your sales tax money, your property tax money now goes into the city. You'll have a representative vote. You'll be able to vote in city council elections. You'll be able to serve on city council commissions, and you'll be able to run for city council. So in fact, right now, you have really no say with the city. If you were to annex, and if anybody wanted to run for city council, you could, and then your community will have a significant voice in city council. That's what I agree. You may not agree. But you don't have one on the city council.
Then another question on top of that.
Okay, a follow-up question? Go ahead. Sorry.
LAFCO is giving waivers if you do this annexation within time without having a protest or whatever. How are you going to lose this waiver if you don't do it within a specific time?
Not sure what.
Waiver.
Well, that's regarding the sewer connections, I believe, is what you're referring to.
Can you clarify what fee waiver you're talking about?
It says here in the proceedings, an item of special criteria, unincorporated land over despite the fact that these items are completely continue to be a problem, and then it goes on to say that LAFCO is waiving its filing fee for item annexation, and the county has agreed to cover annexation mapping costs, surveyors review costs, assessors review costs, pay state board of equalization's filing costs, and budget for needed growth improvements and unincorporated items approved for annexation.
So what is the question?
I was saying, are you going to lose this waiving agreement where they're going to waive the fees if you don't do this annexation within a specific time? I don't know what time they're going to do.
And I apologize, I don't know where you're getting that, those particular.
It's a website.
Well, you have to remember there's 58, 57 other LAFCOs in the state of California. They all have their own web pages. They all have, a lot of them have slightly different rules and regulations, their own policy. What you're maybe referring to is an annexation in another LAFCO or their policy, their local policy is where to encourage cities to annex islands or substantially surrounded areas, they will waive certain things, mainly fees. You mentioned state board of equalization fees. Well, that could be very expensive for a city to pay for an island annexation. Well, LAFCO, that particular LAFCO has agreed to pick up those fees. Mapping fees, whenever there's an annexation, there has to be a legal survey of that area, a legal description, which is provided to the State Board of Equalization in the state of California. That could be very expensive to prepare. Again, it sounds like that LAFCO in particular has waived those fees. Again, that's to encourage cities, financially wise, to annex these pockets or islands. No, LAFCO has not adopted any of those fees. That would be up to the commission to decide to do, but it's certainly something to possibly consider if the city wants to request it.
I have a simple question about, does the city of Chico have any plans to look for and pursue writing grants from the federal or state government to help offset costs to low-income residents who have to use sewer hookups, which obviously
Say we don't have plans right now because we don't have these areas in our city, but we're always, of course it's possible, we're always looking for ways to augment the city's resources to carry out the city's mission and protect public health, safety, welfare, and stuff. So yes, that's possible.
I'd like to answer just a second piece of that on behalf of the county's Housing Rehabilitation Fund. There's been some discussion about community development block grant funds available in the unincorporated areas that can serve residents, low and moderate income residents with housing rehabilitation needs. And the sewer connections do fit within that. So if you're located in the unincorporated area, we have a housing rehabilitation loan program where you can get a low interest loan to assist with this type of connection. The city has a similar program, a similar grant program with limited funds, and it can assist with those types of connections as well inside the city limits. The county program, unfortunately, has a waiting list of well in excess of 75 people. So while there are CDBG funds available to serve areas in the unincorporated area, the funds are slim and the waiting list is unfortunately long. So the city and the county are actually in a relatively similar situation in that regard. There is funding available for low and moderate income households, and if you contact me, and happy to help you understand what those income limits look like. But unfortunately for both the city and the county, those funds are quite slim. And they do come from the federal level down to the state.
That's related to you. My question is, I have a gentleman who's made today and he asked this question. If he has a rental or two, or just one, he will not be able to qualify for restriction.
That is not correct, no. The county's current program as it exists now for housing rehabilitation loans can assist both what we call renter occupied as well as owner occupied, and that is because the objective of that program is to help with the health and safety improvements necessary for a low moderate income household, regardless of the occupancy of the owner. You're welcome.
My question. Yes, because my first question of the day was not have you, as a city council, looked at the agreement from the 80s that said for health concerns, we could look into the sewer without having to annex? Has that been looked at?
I am not aware of that. I have not looked at that, and I'm not aware that the council in any recent time has reviewed that or aware of its existence.
Okay, is there any possibility that maybe before February?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, 18th,
The 17th, I'll restate that, and not that so we're wrapping this up, but
I just wanted that kind of like, if somebody could look into that, propose an agreement from 1982, and answer us, is that just being brushed under the rug?
staff is furiously writing the notes, and they will get on that, and we'll be reporting to the entire council. Yes, all the way in the back. You've been waiting a long time.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. I really appreciate this meeting. You may have already answered this question, and I didn't hear it. It's a question about annexation. Is it possible for individual parcels of land or individual blocks to annex to the city if they wanted to, or does it have to be the whole of Chapman Town that annexes all at once?
Great question. The process, if the city does not approve the annexation agreement, you can certainly apply at any time. And individual parcels can be applied. You can either apply to the city or LAFCO. What this agreement, this proposed agreement, allows is for people to apply for individual parcels, and they will be annexed by their request through the span of time over 5 years. If we don't approve this annexation agreement with LAFCO, you can still apply, but LAFCO has told us that they're interested in swallowing all of the island as much as possible. I'll ask Mr. Benson.
But in general, you could, as an individual.
Hang on one moment, I'm trying to hear the question.
But in general, without the LAFCO application, you could, as an individual partial or like with 3 or 3 on your block or something, you could apply for annexation. And go through it.
That's the typical process, yes.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be just because of what's happening with LAFCO, that this whole thing, everybody's involved. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, did you have a follow-up on that?
There's a couple of things here. One, if the city council does not adopt the annexation plan, so that means you wouldn't be annexed. Individual properties, owners request annexation. That could be for various reasons. One could be for sanitary sewer hookup. It could be because they want to do new development, which requires sanitary sewer hookup. For whatever reason, individual landowners would come to LAFCO. Actually, they'd have to go to the city of Chico to ask to initiate that annexation. Now, there is also, as I mentioned earlier, that individual landowners can petition LAFCO to annex their property. So if the city of Chico, city council refuses to initiate an annexation at the landowner's request, then you could come to LAFCO and do it via petition. A little bit, same process. It requires a vote of the people, who's ever affected. Now, as Councilman Stone said, is that LAFCO, state law allows LAFCO to add or subtract parcels from an annexation proposal. So let's say the city of Chico submits an annexation for 5 parcels. Well, LAFCO could look at that and say, well, that creates illogical jurisdictional boundaries. We want to expand this to take into more parcels. At that case, then we would notify those additional landowners, hold a public hearing. We would also have to hold a protest hearing, which could be defeated. If the protest hearing there could be sufficient protest that results in that annexation being denied. As an example, the former Chico's Market, now known as Boucher Street Market, the city of Chico did not want to initiate the annexation. The landowner requested that from the city council. They didn't want to do that. So he petitioned LAFCO. And he submitted all the fees in the application. We started processing that, looked at the boundaries, and us and the Butte County Public Works Department determined, well, we should take in all the parcels on the west side of Boucher Street to create logical boundaries. Just putting his one parcel in didn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be logical to expand that boundary, to take all those parcels in to create logical and efficient jurisdictional boundaries. We sent out letters to all the people that we wanted to add parcels to. We received feedback from them saying, we don't want it. And so we said to our city, to our commission, we recommend that you not add those parcels in because they don't want to be in, and because if it goes to a protest hearing, it's going to be defeated in that instance. So that annexation just ended in just the Boucher Street Market being annexed to the city of Chico. Those other parcels that we looked at that we thought would create logical boundaries, our commission agreed and said, no, we're going to leave those out. Oh, thank you. Disadvantaged unincorporated communities. This is a state law that came into effect a couple of years ago regarding annexations. They're also known as DUCs, disadvantaged unincorporated communities. These are communities where the median household income is 80% of the state wide medium household income. Chapman, pardon me. The 80%, I believe, is $48,000 and some odd dollars is the median household income. The Chapman and Mulberry communities are a disadvantaged unincorporated community. Several years ago, the state legislature added a requirement to LAFCO that states whenever a city wants to annex a property, we have to look at that to see if that property or that area being annexed is a disadvantaged unincorporated community, and if it is, and if it's adjacent to another one, and by state law, we are required to add that whole disadvantaged unincorporated community into that parcel. Again, state law says that. And again, this is a tool that the state gave the commissions to try to eliminate these islands or substantially surrounded parcels or communities to get rid of these areas. The idea being that they're disadvantaged unincorporated communities, they're not receiving urban type services, full urban services that should be. Counties usually don't provide, they're not in the urban development business. Cities are, therefore it's the advantage to eliminate these. So that's another tool that the state gave the commission.
Just to point out the difference between city and county, just to know some cases about county grant programs or looking up the sewer. The city program, or the city asking this question on Monday, does not cover rental property. And it also, its grant program only applies to those 40 nitrate compliance areas. And as we stated earlier, I think people here have to recognize those who are on the outside of the nitrate compliance areas. It's not like it's the actual border, they're actually individual lots as the island within that are not considered in the nitrate compliance. And therefore, within the city, would not give access to transit. So there's a difference there in terms of annexation for the county program.
I'd also like to point out that the city's program is a grant program. Those are not funds you have to pay back. The county's program is a loan program, and you do have to repay those funds.
Yes, sir.
On that question, I went to the city and they said you can't annex individual parcel unless you're touching the city.
But it needs to be contiguous.
Yeah. So if you're like here, you want to annex, is that true?
Oh, that is true. That is a state law that allows those.
There's no lead problem.
No, there is no lead problem. That's what was occurring back in the late 1940s, early 1940s, throughout the 50s and into the early 60s. And that's one of the reasons the state created these commissions. It's LAFCO.
So then to petition the LAFCO, say, can I annex to the city? They just look at the map and say, hey, you're not touching the city.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't go. The city wouldn't do that. What would happen is the city would have to go, well, the landowner who wants, let's say, somebody in the middle of, that's a couple of parcels away.
Yeah.
They would need to go talk to those landowners to see, hey, are you interested in being annexed to the city of Chico? And if they are, they would go along. If they're not, that one individual owner, we wouldn't even take it because it's not contiguous. It needs, that application would need to come to us showing contiguity. It would have to be a pattern where it actually touches.
You know, everybody has opinions and everything. This is just a suggestion. Would it be fair, like, to send out a letter, like everybody in Chapman County have a vote, how they do it, not everybody shows up to these meetings. And then everybody could vote, everybody would have a fair say, instead of just a few people standing up and giving their opinion.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
The LAFCO sent out, I noticed,
Well, a couple of things here.
and then that would give the city an opportunity to make fair judgments on, hey, what do the people really want? You know, instead of, well, hey, I went to the meeting and there was 30 people and they don't want it.
At the city commission, at the city council's February 17th meeting next week, they're going to consider whether they want to adopt that annexation agreement. If they do, they still have to go through the annexation process. They still have to notify each every individual landowner that they want to do that. Now, there is a state law that says they can, if there's more than 1,000 people that are within that area, they can put a notice in the paper. I think what we've heard is that they will notify everyone individually to ensure that everyone is notified. And that will be at a future hearing, again, assuming that the city council wants to go forward with the annexation agreement. By law, they have to notify you that they're going to hold another hearing where they're actually going to consider initiating that annexation. And at that point, they could still say, no, we don't want to go forward through it. But they've already, by then, I'm assuming they've already signed the annexation agreement and they've been.
Follow-up question is
as much as they try to do this best, they still have to do Sacramento. Sacramento is working with Washington, D.C.
You know, and if people could still belong to the county and look out for the sewer, that'd be great. Because that's not higher than that, that's not higher than what we're hearing the city saying, no, you can't look out for the city sewer because that's all. No, and let's not forget that groundwater contamination doesn't adhere to arbitrary governmental orders, right? I mean, if your nitrates are poisoning the groundwater, that affects the entire area and larger in city and county every bit as much. So, I mean, there's no, it doesn't stop at the Chapman Town border. And in fact, there's lots of septic tanks throughout the city of Chico represented areas.
Well, you're in a hotspot, but you're not. Wait a minute, like the guy got person right across the street.
Yeah,
how did it stop right there?
I have a septic tank in my home, and I'm in the city of Chico, and I haven't been requested to connect to sewer yet. I will. I'm on probably the worst street in the entire city in terms of pavement. I don't abuse anyone for that because I'm not an arterial, but that's just the way that it is. There was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't pay.
This has very little to do with $54,000. If this problem went away with $54,000, no problem. I mean, we're talking about $600,000 a year in annual service costs by the city to address the needs of this community. If $54,000 would do it, believe me, we wouldn't be here. No problem.
City, laptop, excuse me. No, what the annexation, again, it goes back to the 62 unauthorized connections, and we're not asking, the city wouldn't ask the tenant for that money. That's got to come. It was the city's error, and for whatever reason, there were errors that these connections should, by state law, should have gone last. And approval. The city didn't do that for whatever reason. The city now, and those fees that you quote, those are the fees that would be if the annexation is approved. I believe the agreement, and I'm sorry, I don't know, I have it right here, it's going to take too long to find the section. The fees are, if the city doesn't go through with that, we will charge our normal fee for those extension services hooked up. I think it would be far in excess of the $2,000 or whatever that fee is that you quoted. It would go up quite a bit because of that. Now, if the city wants to, well, those were the fees that were before. The current fee is $600, but most of these were the connections were made, and the city authorized those connections. Those were before our commission set that $600 fee. Remember, I believe I said it used to be $1,500, $1,500 on it, and then that was just an initial deposit at the time of material waste. So as we analyzed the information and prepared the report for the commission's review, we would charge against that time. So if we went over $1,500, we would ask for more. And I believe that's what would occur is we would go back to that previous fee. And the commission, again, when they set that $600 fee about 3 years ago, they recognized that there would be a lot of hookups because of the city and the county properly installed these sewer lines throughout unincorporated portions of the city within the city of Chico's sphere of influence. And so the commission recognized, well, let's encourage people to hook up by reducing the fees. So getting back to the lawsuit, if the city of Chico was to provide individual applications for each one of those unauthorized, we don't like to call them illegal, just unauthorized because the city didn't do the proper, go through the proper procedures. They would have to pay basically, I believe, full freight for that, and it would be one. The way it is now, all those unauthorized connections would just be, if the annexation agreement was approved, they would just be on one one application to us, and we would do them in mass. Whereas if the annexation agreement is not approved, we're requesting, or telling, we've already told the city that they need to submit an individual extension services application for each one of those. We don't like to call it that. I mean, no, because the city, it goes back to the city did not do the right thing. Again, we're trying to come up with an agreement with the city that we believe is worthwhile. It is to each other's advantage to do that. And I know you don't agree with that. But it's consistent with state law in order to get your island area annexed into the city of Chico. And that could be true, but we're not going to leave you alone because, as we stated earlier, and people are going to want to annex because they're going to need to get higher densities. They're going to need to
there we go. There we go. You heard it right here. Thank you.
And there's only a few parcels in Chapman Town that under the county or the city that could be further subdivided because most of your parcels are 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. The only one I can think of is the church, and that's like a Tabernacle Church, I believe. Tabernacle is out. It's sitting on a
I want to say nothing, and I'm not sure, I want to say that the 3-acre parcel, that is one of the few ones that have the potential to be subdivided. And if they do, they're going to need sewer. If they want to subdivide that, they're going to need sewer, and they would have to come to the city. City's going to, I would assume, say, well, we need an extension of service request for this. Most likely, the commission would deny that and say you need to annex. Very difficult to do.
The problem with all this is we don't have a vote. Every other time a parcel or an entity around Chico was annexed, those people have an opportunity to voice their opinion. And we do not. And that's the basic human right that we're opposed to. We deserve a vote just like those other people do. And in Chapman Town and Mulberry District, we have always been the lower part of the population of Chico as far as Chico's down. We have been looked down on. Boy, we are living here for a long time, property for a long time. It is our heritage, our own. And we don't want it to change. We love the rural aspect of Chapman and Mulberry. Pleading with the city to announce this. If you can get a loan or get funds somehow to pay them off.
Again, that, as you heard from Ms. Ornette, if this costs $54,000, believe me that the problem would be taken care of. There's no loan necessary. That's not the issue. That is remotely. You heard it from Mr. Benz. They have LAFCO has a plan. They are pressing the city to do this. The impact to the residents of this community, as I see it now, is extremely detrimental. If the city doesn't at least come to some broker agreement, whatever that may be, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
The last meeting, it was 2 months ago, the council meeting.
In November.
The attorney said that she's not been learning more. That there may be some other avenues we have not looked at that to solve this rather than a lawsuit.
And the city, they will be coming up at the February 17th meeting, the city council meeting, where we will be discussing, again, all of these same concerns, and they will bring your concerns there, whether you can be there. It is definitely on the agenda for February 17th. It's Tuesday night. The meeting starts at 6:30. I'm guessing that we will be hearing this item. We have a number of agenda items. I believe we're hearing this at about 7:30. That's just my guess based on the time. So it's sometime between 7 and 8 it should be heard. It's always bad to be late when it's I have to interrupt you. I've got a request from our assistant city manager, Chris Conlon. Probably has some input.
Thank you, Randall. I wanted to first thank you for triggering this and for all our council members that are in attendance. Understand that the city representatives and council are not your legal representatives, but the fact that they're here should say a lot about what they think of your neighborhood. They care. This item came before council in August, and your council members here voted no. It came before council in November, and once again, the council shot annexation down. I heard something coming from you, sir, but I want some clarity. My impression is the only choice the city has is either agree to an annexation agreement or potentially we're going to sue you. But today you mentioned that the city can apply individually for those 62 unauthorized sewer connections, and that will be it. You will review that as required under state law, and it doesn't necessarily mean it will turn into an annexation. Is that true?
That's, to my knowledge, that is what it is. The lawsuit is over the city's, the potential for lawsuit is over the city's connection of these sewer system, these individual parcels to the city sanitary sewer system. That was an option, and Mayor Sorensen already left, but there's a letter that we sent, I wish I had a copy of that, about the lawsuit that was held 3 or 4 weeks ago. And And unfortunately, I don't recall what that particularly what it said, but I believe said that you need to basically make right on these sewer connections, pay the full previous price for the application processing fees for that application, which would be a minimum, well, 65, it would be in excess of $100,000, I believe. There's no guarantee that the commission would approve of these. Some of these might be adjacent to existing city of Chico jurisdictional boundaries. In that case, that may account that the commission may say, no, we want you to annex those because they are adjacent there. It's logical to do that. The city may refuse to do that, and then we're probably right back to where we are right now.
In order to advise the council what option they have. So what you're saying is the option they have is one, to approve the annexation agreement request and file an application. Two, not to do that, and potentially trigger an action from LAFCO. Or three, the option that's not been written anywhere, but the council could take action to file applications for the 62, in which case we would not necessarily be forced to annex the entire chapter.
That's my understanding. I will get you a clarification on Monday.
Can I ask a point of clarification on that? Point of clarification on that. Steve Betts is here as liaison for the LAFCO board. It's actually the board that will make the final decision. The reason I point that out is that when there is an annexation application, the board can attach other properties to that application. Or not.
So I have a question for Mr. Stone.
And we're not in control of that.
So Mr. Stone, are you guys putting in an application to annex Chapman?
We are not putting in an application to annex Chapman. No, that has not been done. Not suggested. The only thing that's on the table here is LAFCO has threatened a lawsuit, and we have come to an agreement to annex Chico over 5 years. That's what's contained in the agreement. 2 times since I've been on the council, that agreement has been rejected. I voted no both of those times.
Basically boils down to LAFCO exploring
Allow her to finish her question. Go ahead.
So in other words, the big guy, I'm sorry, the gentleman there that from APCO is saying that if Chico does not annex, they're going to sue the city of Chico. So
that is correct.
So, sir, in other words, also the applications that have already been done, why don't you guys approve them, and then it's the rest of it doesn't have to be annexed? Because in other words, you're just being the big bully. Isn't that right, that they're just being a bully then, because they can do that?
The commission believes it's doing the right thing via state law. Laws that LAFCO's go by.
Then you bring the state representative here to tell us that.
I'm sorry, I haven't.
You bring the state representative here, the people that voted for the state representative, to be here at these meetings. Because that is the right of the people, by our Constitution.
The annexations are local, the state doesn't. They set the rules that we go by, the LAFCO's, the commission goes by, but they don't get involved individually in it.
So in other words then, so you're breaking 2 laws then, because you're saying that the state makes the rules that you have to follow by, but you don't really have to follow those rules because you guys have the control.
No, we follow all the rules that the state says we have to follow. I'm not quite sure why you're saying
recourse. But there's no recourse. There's no recourse for these people to not have the annex. So in other words, you're just being the big brother, the big bully. Because you're saying the state's telling you, but in effect, you're the one that's saying it.
Now, you have to remember that the commission just doesn't operate on its own. It goes by the rules and regulations that the state has put in place. These are the same rules and regulations that the counties have to follow, cities have to follow, special districts have to follow. You know, if the city of Chico didn't follow a certain regulation that the state, such as something from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, they can get sued by that agency. Just as I'm assuming we can get sued by the state if we weren't following the rules that we're required to abide by.
So I guess my suggestion for the people of Chapman Town is to incorporate yourselves and have a vote So then there'll be a representative for the state, for your town, if that's what you need. We don't have to be the part of the city of Chico at all. Right.
You mentioned a lawsuit. My father was a lawyer, and he, every time I would say, oh, we're going to get sued, they're going to get sued, whatever, he says that's ridiculous. He says anybody can sue anybody for anything. It doesn't mean they're going to win. So if you bring up the word lawsuit like, oh, geez, you're going to get screwed, that's not necessarily the case. Most people think it's sued, they'll counter-sue, you know, and it's all, it ends up a big mess. So if you read opinion about the word lawsuit, it's kind of a scare tactic, you know. So they have to sue you, so maybe they'll lose.
We have a city attorney, of course, and staff that consults with us regarding the potential for lawsuits, the impact of that lawsuit, the cost of defending a lawsuit. These are not.
But he's on your side. He's on your side, though. So
he is on our side.
It's a TV station.
No, right.
Yes, sir.
I'm the only guy that has one. Citizen.net, CITIZN.net.
The simple lawsuit.
Yep. 24/7 online. I'll put up a schedule. Just, I don't know. Do you do Facebook at all? Okay.
Best person on earth.
Well,
Never gets
okay,
invited to a
schedules.
party.
The schedule's put up to Facebook. If you don't want to log on to Facebook and be anonymous, well, then what you do is you look up an email account that's
Get rid of
and then use that to log in on the site.
That's a bigger picture.
I could probably do it through my business on Facebook. Okay, so tell me the website first. The website is facebook.com/citizen television.
Great folks at Chapman and Mulberry focus on the future of the mission and
that the
you are the messenger
itself.
He is not your representative of the mission.
Which is actually a Ustream channel.
The city of Chico does not have any members on the LAFCO.
I'm a big Republican.
So just understand, when you think about who you want to throw the punches at,
Facebook.com/citizen television.
You're focusing on getting the local city councilors to buy in to what you're saying to deny the agreement that they're trying to take care of. What you need, but you don't have a city council member sitting on LAFCO. Make LAFCO a city for the mission of LAFCO and the future of the "we will not leave you alone" comment. Now we're going under the bus, but we will not leave you alone because of the mission of LAFCO, not 62 unauthorized sewers. It's the mission for many reasons. Don't blur the line of the simple problems that are trying to be accomplished by your city council and LAFCO on February 17th. Focus on the future and the mission of LAFCO is to get rid of the dumps.
That's right.
Well put, and I appreciate you coalescing the discussion and argument. Perfect. That's exactly right.
Will we be able to speak at the meeting?
On the 17th?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's
We'll have to go 3 minutes, if all of us show up. Because I know it ends at 10:30.
It doesn't end at 10:30. We stopped taking new items at 10. Given the agenda, I don't think it's extraordinarily large. There's a good chance that you'll have 3 minutes. The mayor ultimately makes that decision, and he does that to ensure that everybody will have an opportunity to be heard still within our guidelines. So if all of you showed up and that was the only thing on the agenda and we started at 6:30, I don't know how that would go till 10. You see, so that's the jockeying that the mayor does. He'll do his best to make sure that everybody's heard because that's the reason why we're having the meeting.
I just have one quick question regarding the council meeting on the 17th. Is it possible that you could invite somebody from Glasgow who's not just a spokesperson who can actually give us some real information?
Sure. I imagine the executive director, Stephen Lucas, will be there, but Mr. Betzman.
Unfortunately, Mr. Lucas will not be there. As I stated earlier, he is back east in Pennsylvania visiting his parents, a long anticipated and scheduled vacation for him. In our meeting, I will be there, and also Chairman Leverance, Carl Leverance, who is our public member, who is the chairman of LAFCO.
he has stated he will try to be in the, I believe he said he will be there. So I will confirm with him before that date.
Other questions? Yes. Stephanie David.
I think where my information was made, but we're talking about the 62 unauthorized connections and the agreement that LAFCO made. And it seems to me that those 62 have a special rate. Like if the city agrees, those 62 connections will cost like $10,000 or something. But if the city does not authorize the standardization, each person that now after this will connect to the sewer system because their septic system has failed is much more costly. Do I understand that correctly?
If the city council agrees to the annexation agreement and follows through with the annexation of Chapman and Mulberry, any parcel within the Chapman and Mulberry area, the island area, will be able to connect the city of Chico sanitary sewer system without involvement from the commission. As of right now, is each landowner, if you want to hook up to the city sewer, you have to come and apply to us at a discounted rate, because again, as I mentioned about 2 or 3 years ago, the commission reduced the fees for that. Now, so all you need to do if you are annexed is go to the city and say you're for it. And actually, let me clarify. The annexation agreement calls, and I stated this earlier, that the annexation agreement calls for, once the city council approves it, 5 years from that date, you will be annexed. Not immediately, not a couple months after the city, after LAFCO approves it, but 5 years later. So that's intended to give the city time to start gearing up, wrapping up to provide services, to prepare their plans to be able to provide services. So you'll still be in the county. However, if LAFCO approves that annexation, in that meanwhile, in those 5 years, all those properties will be able to hook up the sanitary sewer system without anything from us. So it'll be a cost savings to you, very efficient. All you need to do is go down to the city. You do have to pay, again, their cost for the processing and all the trunk fees and whatever else there is. Oh, thank you. Under existing law and Butte County and Butte LAFCO policies, if you want to, if any parcel in an unincorporated area, that is within the county, not within the city, they want to expand, they want to get sewer service or some kind of sewer service from the city, they have to apply for the extension of services request to LAFCO. That's under normal circumstances. If there's an immediate threat to health and safety, and that could be either due to a septic system failing, where you actually have sewage coming to the surface, or it's backing up and there's no way to feasibly repair that system, you can request from LAFCO under current law right now an emergency extension. That takes is either myself or Mr. Lucas as the executive officer to approve that. Now, that takes care of that immediate problem. So if your sewer starts backing up and it's clear that your septic system has failed, we will give you that authorization that you can connect to the city. You still have to pay all the city sewers.
Here you have a case one. He doesn't speak English. He told me he already paid all his fees. And 3 months passed and he hasn't had the problem fixed. He already paid all the fees. And according to this form, where the fees come from the city of Chico, they basically ask you to keep a notarized, says here, submit, complete a notarized LAFCO annexation consent and conveyance. So basically they said, okay, you want the city to be annexed, then we can take care of you. Otherwise, the form is not complete, and he has ended up with 3 months without having a house.
I'm not aware.
Well, he's talking with Mr. Sorry, what's your name? Martinez. He said he doesn't speak English, and I'm just bringing here, because there are many people out there with real problems. And meanwhile, we are getting here in LAFCO or City of Chico. This could be done without the LAFCO or City of Chico getting involved. Just let us be Chapman County. Like the gentleman right here says, with the red hat, over there. It doesn't have to be. Palaco has interest because money there. Cine Chico, yeah, money there too. 4,000 to connect to the sewage line, of course it's money there. When you multiply what? Thousands probably? Millions of dollars.
Thank you for your comments.
You
And if you have a problem, I can talk to them afterwards. I just speak Spanish, but.
Yo también hablé con él y le dije que esperara un momento. Tengo las respuestas.
I just bring that to see that there's a real cases out here in Chapman Town. They're going without having the house. It's not livable. Because now the search, the septic failed, and if you don't pay your fees, there's no house. Thank you.
He's also asking about rentals.
Well, if it's a rental investment, it's likely, whatever it is.
Maybe.
You think many people here in Chapman Town just because they live in it, many people have investment. And it's likely too. I mean, it's your. What is it? Yes, to have a rental in Chapman Town or what?
Another question.
Maybe, go ahead.
To the people of Chapman, here I'm going to ask. Is it clever? To the people of Chapman Town sitting here, I'd like to ask this question. As I look around at all of you, I like Chapman. I like to be able to walk where there are no sidewalks everywhere. In other words, the earth is free. I call it. But that's me. 40 years, 50 years now, I don't think even though I can listen. And I think, what about future generations? Will they want it like this? Will they want to have access to all the things of the future? With your children and grandchildren want to keep it like this? I ask you to consider that and ask questions. Would they want that? Yes. And then they can for today. Yeah, today at this time it would be very. But think about your future generations.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, one thing I want to say regarding that question, I can answer some of that. In Chapman Town alone, not just my kids, other kids I've raised over age. And I went to all age because I'll be truthful with you. When health gets bad, I want to sell out and go to an island. Many reasons. And all of my kids said, Dad, this is where we were raised. This is where we were born. This is where we live. I lived in a little tiny trailer with 8 kids, fed them every night, plus me and my wife, and there was a lot of love come out of that house. You know what? That property there, to me, is worth more than a big house I got because of the love and where it was located at. And in Chapman Town, I think everybody is here. If you have any concerns, we need to take you to the meeting and go from there. Because there's no sense of just going over things that we have already discussed, things we're sitting here going back and forth over. And the sad part about me is, I wish we would have had better representation. After Jane Dolan left, and I'm not speaking out of turn, we lost our representation. I feel that way. I've had several people stop me and say that. I had a guy ask me today, if nothing else, Jane can't come back, could we get Bob? At least he's taking the time out of his day and uses his time to still try to help. And I said, you got to consider the people. You're Chapmanites in your heart. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
There is something going on in this area. It is a black area. It's an area of cheap. We are and none of us here want to bring yours here. It's cool. It's doable. We don't have fancy jobs. We don't have
could probably, well, first of all, to answer to your question about the 62 hookups, those happened over decades. So that's not something that's taken place in the last year or two. I don't know precisely how long, but it's been some time. Staff tells me it was in excess of 10 years. However, I don't.
No, they're not all in Chapman County. There are sewers in the area. They're expanding as well, which occurred recently, and also occurred in other parts of town as well.
My rough estimate, I believe there's 8 to 10.
So
That's
you
less than
really want a job
$54,000.
taken because of poor people's house. That's, it's the last job. Gentrification of all.
Mr. Engel.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
All these sewer lines in Chapman Town, part of it is, I've been in Chapman Town for over 75 years. Okay, they still, if I hook up to the sewer, they want to charge me for a line that they put in 35 to 40 years ago. And who knows the city sewer? Is it LAFCO? The city of water district? No, sewer. LAFCO's got to have their fee, which is outrageous. If I hook my property up to the sewer, it's going to cost me over $15,000. Then I'm going to have to pay a fee to use it. To the water district. This all didn't occur until the sewer line was being put in and LAFCO stepped in.
At a point of clarification, I prefer Mr. Martinez to answer that question. But the water district, Cal Water collects a fee on behalf of the city of Chico, so you actually don't pay that to Cal Water. You're literally paying when you write your bill, you pay your bill, but it comes to the city. The city of Chico owns the sewer treatment plant and owns the trunk lines. But I'll let Mr. Martinez answer your question.
I apologize, I did not hear your question, because I wasn't trying to teach questions. What was the, who owns the sewer lines? The city owns the sewer lines.
Okay, after LAFCO, after the new sewer lines was put in, LAFCO stepped in, they charged you $600 to hook up.
Correct. That's their processing fee, it has nothing to do with ownership of the land.
Well, isn't that the same? If I have to pay LAFCO $600, isn't that the same as paying for putting the line in?
No, it's not.
Why not?
It's an application processing fee. It has nothing to do with the capital costs associated with the sewer line. No fees that we require for you to connect to the sewer.
LAFCO said it's the city of Texas fee without the charge. The gentleman right there said.
From my property, it was put in by the federal government 40 years ago. I had to pay LAFCO $600.
Because you're outside of the city limits. Because you're outside of the city, you have to go to LAFCO and get permission to get a city service to your property. Uses to process your application.
So somebody tell me whether or not the area around Two Creek, Street Clubs, is a going to be a problem, and why in the north part of the golf course, I think, the 17th country club. So if we're going to annex areas that have nitrate problems, I've never heard any mention of ever annexing nuclear things. Do they have a nitrate issue there?
I'm not aware of a nitrate groundwater issue in that area, but I encourage you to either visit the Environmental Health Division's website. You can go to buttecounty.net and navigate to environmental health, and they have all sorts of information about groundwater areas and all of the different plumes. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to look at their phone numbers here as well, because I know that there was a comment about not being able to use the website. So you can also call their office at 538-7281, and they have records of all the groundwater investigations that take place throughout the county to understand any different types of contaminations, nitrate or otherwise, in the groundwater.
I've always been a little concerned about the fact that nutrient areas have a lot of problems. Being moved on island out here in town.
And that's why we're having this meeting. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to thank all for coming here and providing this information. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, thank you all for being here. We'll see you on the 17th.
Citizen Television.